Stage is all about consumed with how they look and how they feel.
You talking about people who are consumed with lustfulness.
Because their lives are consumed with making a living and raising their children.
Many of us can sometimes become consumed with our problem areas.
I was consumed with this idea of if we can get funding.
If your brain is always consumed with other stimuli, you'll rarely ponder the bigger picture and set long-term goals for yourself and consider how to achieve them.
Does the phone get not only consumed with the heart, the spirit is also consumed with the mind, that as John said,
consumed with speed. The poet
next week, and I'm sort of consumed with guilt by it. I feel like if there were any adults in the room, I wouldn't be allowed to do that, because it just shouldn't be allowed. We shouldn't be allowed to do this to the planet. It's a hard thing to come to grips with, and I'm going to fly there anyway because I'm sharing in this denial as well. I mean, how can we not?
Right. You mean if we actually admitted the scale of the problem, it would we'd all be frozen. I don't mean actually
we are,
frozen.
Yes. Psychologically frozen, yes. I think it just takes time and getting used to the idea and maybe turnover of the population before we can come to grips with this emotionally, is my feeling.
So this could be a multi-generational process. Jane Risen, since you referred to your research, tell us more, because it's fascinating, this idea that feeling warm makes you more susceptible to the argument that global warming is occurring. So tell us about your research on this.
So we ran a handful of different studies. Some of them were sort of just looking at it outside. So we find a correlation, a relationship between how warm it is outside and people's beliefs. And that can be accounted for by a sort of a host of different psychological processes that can give rise to that. So there is this tendency, people don't have a good sense of that we rely on available information in a way that doesn't actually sort of comport with what the actual information we should be using. And so if it today happens to be very hot, we might think of that as a good example. And there have been other studies to suggest that that's true. But beyond that, we actually found that the actual physical experience of warmth is also playing a role in it. So when we bring people indoors and put them in a cubicle and just either warm the cubicle up for 15 minutes before they come in and then take that out, that people also report feeling more strongly when they're in the warm cubicle. And this doesn't go away even if you ask them about the warmth, which is sort of a trick that psychologists often use. If we think that you're unintentionally using a cue that you would correct for if you could, we draw your attention to it, but that doesn't get rid of it. And we find that the same thing happens actually if you make people thirsty, then they believe more in drought. So the physical experiences that we're having are powerful
and that's even more extreme than the example of going outside on a sunny day, because you're controlling
the
environment.
There's no information, right? I mean, that's our hope was that the same is true in the cubicle, where there's no way that the room that I'm in can't be because of the earth warming. But maybe that's even more clear with the pretzel example. So we have people eat pretzels to get thirsty, and then they think that drought is more likely to occur. And what we find with the global warming in particular is that what's happening is that when people are feeling warm, they are simulating, they're imagining a world that is sort of more, it's easier, they have a clearer mental representation of what a world plagued by global warming would look like. So sort of pictures of